There are goals that decide World Cups. And there are goals remembered forever because they are so absurd, so surreal that they feel like parody. Own goals. An own goal is football's darkest irony. A defender doing everything to save his team and becoming its greatest enemy. A goalkeeper catching the ball only to drop it into his own net. A backline collapsing in panic, scoring against themselves. Psychologically, own goals are brutal because they attack the very identity of a player. Defenders are meant to protect, and in that moment they destroy. And these moments, as absurd as they are, have burned themselves into history. Colombia against the United States, a golden generation entering the tournament with high hopes. Escobar slid to intercept a cross. The ball spun into his own net. Colombia lost, eliminated. Days later, Escobar was murdered in Medellin, allegedly in revenge for the goal. This moment shows football's darkest psychology. A single mistake can decide not just a game, but a life. An experienced defender, one moment of madness. Sinclair volleyed the ball spectacularly into his own net. A strike as beautiful as any goal, except for the wrong team. The irony, own goals often look like masterpieces, just reversed. Liverpool versus Burnley. A Champions League winner, expected to dominate. Yet he stumbled, tried to clear, and acrobatically shoveled the ball into his own goal. Psychologists call this overreaction under pressure. The more a player fears a mistake, the more likely it is to happen. Berry versus Darlington, an attempted clearance. He blasted the ball into his own face, the rebound flying into the net. Here football turns into slapstick, a tragicomic scene replayed forever on blooper reels. Stoke City's warrior, adored by fans. But on this day he scored 2 own goals and missed a penalty. The perfect storm of humiliation. A classic example of the spiral of errors. One mistake kills confidence, and each following action collapses under its weight. These were only the first 5, and already it's clear. Own goals are not just accidents. They are psychological dramas. Next, we dive deeper into the own goals that changed tournaments, defined careers, and scarred fans forever. Own goals are not only accidents of small clubs or bloopers for highlight reels. Some own goals have changed the course of tournaments, defined careers, and carved themselves permanently into football's memory. Laurent Blanc, World Cup winner, defensive rock, and yet in one fateful match, he turned a harmless cross into his own net with surgical precision. It looked like a perfect striker's finish, except into the wrong goal. The psychology here is overconfidence collapse. Even the most reliable legends are 1 second away from humiliation. Neville, England's warrior, but one back pass slipped past his own goalkeeper, Scott Carson. England failed to qualify for Euro 2008. A nation collapsed, and an own goal became the symbol. This was routine turned into disaster. A pass executed thousands of times became the trigger of failure. Germany's midfield machine. And yet, a random deflection off his shin sent the ball into his own net. The crowd laughed. Khedira smiled bitterly. Even world champions cannot escape the randomness of football. This was chaos in its purest form. Old Trafford, title race tension. Irwin, reliable, disciplined, trusted. A mistimed back pass rolled straight into his own net. United lost points, and the title slipped further away. Own goals cut deeper than conceded goals because they fracture trust between teammates. Julio Cesar, a world-class keeper, jumped for a simple cross. Instead of catching it, he punched it into his own net. Brazil roared in disbelief. This was the psychology of identity collapse. A single blunder redefining the memory of a player in an entire tournament. Own goals are explosions of chaos, tiny seconds that erase years of discipline. And in the next block, we will see the most absurd of all. The goals that still live as memes. The ones so surreal they feel like fiction. So far, we've seen own goals that were tragic, painful, sometimes simply unlucky. But there is another category. The own goals so absurd, so surreal, that they could belong in a comedy script. Own goals that went viral instantly because they show the entire range of human psychology. Panic, overconfidence, shame, and in the end, collective laughter. A reliable defender, trusted for years, but against Coventry, disaster struck. Dixon attempted a routine back pass. Instead, he chipped a perfect lob over his goalkeeper into his own net. Psychologists call this over-automation collapse. The brain switches to autopilot, and in that moment, the ordinary becomes catastrophic. For Dixon, it was humiliation. For the fans, Unforgettable comedy. Popovic tried to clear a cross. Instead, he flicked it with his heel into the corner of his own net. A finish worthy of a striker. The irony of aesthetic failure. The more beautiful the execution, the more painful the mistake, because perfection was achieved, but against oneself. A harmless back pass from a teammate. Enkelman miscontrolled it, and the ball rolled slowly, cruelly, into the net. This is the psychology of the catastrophe moment. The simplest action becomes impossible, and humiliation multiplies because everyone can see how easy it should have been. Pollock headed the ball awkwardly, chased after it, and volleyed it spectacularly into his own net. The goal was so absurd that City fans ironically voted it the best goal in club history. This is collective humour as coping, the way fans transform pain into laughter to survive it. A world champion, a leader, a warrior. But against Paraguay, his clearance turned fatal. The ball spun into his own net, and Italy's World Cup collapse began. This is projection of guilt. One mistake becomes the symbol of an entire failure, and players carry that weight for years. These five, Dixon, Popovic, Enkelman, Pollock, De Rossi, represent the absurd side of own goals, where comedy, tragedy, and psychology collide. And that is why they live forever, not just as errors, but as stories, as memes, as symbols of football's unpredictable beauty. Own goals are more than accidents. They are psychological mirrors, moments where pressure, fear, and chaos collide to create the unforgettable. What makes own goals immortal is not just the ball crossing into the wrong net, but the emotions they ignite. Shame in the player, fury in the fans, guilty laughter in the crowd. Psychologists call it an identity fracture. Defenders are protectors, but in that second they become destroyers. The brain perceives that contradiction as shock. It's also loss aversion at its peak. A conceded goal hurts, but a self-inflicted one feels twice as painful. Every generation carries its iconic own goals. They live in blooper reels, memes and documentaries. From Escobar's tragedy in 1994 to Pollock's comedy in 1998, they shape how we remember football. Strange as it sounds, own goals are culture. They remind us that the game is human, flawed, vulnerable. Each own goal is a drama in seconds, born from panic, hesitation, miscommunication. They are not just mistakes, they are windows into the soul. In a world where footballers are treated like gods, own goals bring them back to earth, reminding us that failure is what makes heroes human. Picture the stadium. A ball trickles across the line into the wrong net. Heads drop, voices explode, half the world laughs, and somewhere a child smiles, knowing this absurd moment will live forever. Own goals are football's tragicomedy, and that's why they are eternal. Now it's your turn. Which own goal shocked you the most? And which one do we still need to cover? Drop it in the comments, give us a like, and subscribe to Kicksplosion_TV, because football is not just about glory, it's about the chaos that makes it unforgettable. Sometimes the mistakes write the greatest legend.